I'm so excited to hear from the panelists today. Before we get started with them, though, I just wanted to remind everyone about the One Room Schoolhouse group on Schoology. It's really easy to join. If you're not familiar with Schoology already, there are some instructions up on the screen, and there's also a lovely article on the Atlas website. The link is at the bottom of this page. And there are Schoology groups in other areas as well for math and adult career pathways and ACEs and lots of other topics within ABE. So it's a really great resource. The code to join our group is on the screen, but if you don't have a chance to write it down right now, that's also in the article on Atlas. So in today's webinar, we are going to focus on identifying challenges in delivering ACPs in one-room schoolhouse or rural settings. We're also going to learn about some promising practices for identifying and delivering ACPs in those settings, despite the challenges. We'll have a chance to network with other one-room schoolhouse practitioners about the topic of ACPs, and we will briefly just touch on some of the fantastic tools and resources on the Atlas website that are available for you to start developing your own adult career pathway programming. So our first panelist today is Moua-Leske. She's the director of Southwest ABE in Marshall, Minnesota. And she has to leave a little bit early before the end of the webinar, so we will listen to her presentation and have some time for questions and discussion with her. Then we'll hear our other two panelists, Jill and Michelle, and we'll have time for discussion with them after their presentations. So, I think I'll turn it over to you. Just let me know when you'd like me to advance each slide.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Liz. And you said my name correct.
Oh, I tried.
I took over for Pat Thomas, and she still can't say the English part of my name correct. So, okay. So like Liz said, I am the program manager down in Southwest ABE. I cover the Marshall region. We serve 18 counties. We're divided into 3 regions. In the Rivard part, the northern part there, Sean Martin is our program manager, and then I cover the 4 middle counties, and then the bottom there is Marty. And Marty, I see you're on with us, so if there's anything you want to add to my part of the presentation, Marty, feel free to jump in. All right, you can go next one, please. All right, so we have career pathways programs down in southwestern Minnesota. These are just a list of some of the programs that we've had. The CNA, we have it for our regions. Welding, we have it at in Rivard and in Marshall. And then at one point, we did pilot an evening class for people that didn't pass a background check. Because right now our welding classes, we have it during the day at the Marshall Alternative School. So if you can't pass a background check, you can't be in the school. And so this really limited some people that had background checks or had some discrepancies in their background check that weren't able to attend the class. So that went really well. Medical terminology, that one right now is just offered down in Worthington. They are looking at teaching that one through ITV as well as the trained medication aid. That will also be down in Worthington, but again, we're looking at ITV potential so that way we can reach out further. And I was told that, so medical terminology is a prerequisite for TMA, and then if we're trying to encourage some of our students that took our CNA program to take the class as well too, because they'll be able to get a $2 an hour wage increase. Community interpreter, that down in Worthington, and that should be happening, I think, this spring here, right, Marty? I'll let her fill in if she wants to. And then we just started diesel powertrain hydraulics in Rivard, and we just did that one, I believe, in December. And then we do CDL as well here in Marshall. You go next one, Liz. So why do we choose these specific programs? Because when I was completing my slides, I took a peek at Jill's, and I noticed that some of their programs are different than ours. And I mean, I already know why we have ours. We base it on deed data, and so they kind of look at what jobs are needed around here, what industry, and obviously our economy, is a little different than up in the metro area, where metro area, they need a lot more manufacturing. And I think everybody needs healthcare, but down here we need a lot of more of those industrial jobs. So the welding, we're trying to get into diesel. There's a lot more of those hands-on mechanical jobs that Minnesota West and I believe Ridgewater will probably teach. So. And then we also go by what grants the Private Industry Council, or we call it PIC here, that they secure. So some of those grants they write specifically for instance, we just secured PIC just secured a grant for women in jobs for women that in areas that normally women are not in. And so we'll focus on that. Or right now our grant is a lot with the welding and the healthcare area there. And then we also work closely with Minnesota West, so we need to determine if they have teachers and instructors that are available to teach these classes, because sometimes they might not be able to offer a class that we want, but they've been really fantastic as a partner working with us. They will find somebody to teach it if we want the class. They usually work really well with us on it. So next. So we have kind of two different models that we follow, and I kind of have it in parentheses of who uses that model. So down in Worthington, they have more of a bridge program, and then in Mervyn and Marshall, we have more of an integrated. We have a bridge, but our bridge is very different than Worthington, and the reason that the format is different for us than down in with Marnie's area is because of her demographics of her students. She has a lot more lower ESL students, and we tend to have higher ESL or native English speakers that take our career pathways classes. So we don't need that bridge that Marty has. They teach it several weeks before the actual class starts that's being taught at Minnesota West. These bridge classes are taught by her instructors, and they really get down into it in depth and make sure that their students understand all the vocabulary, they understand how to, all the terminology, all that stuff, because it's healthcare, any kind of degree with that, there's a lot of vocabulary and students can easily get lost in that. And we want to make sure that our students are successful. So they really do a lot of prep work with that. And then Worthington also uses LearnerWeb, that CNA portion, as part of their curriculum, I believe. And Marty, correct me if I'm wrong. And then we use Mervyn and Marshall, we do integrated. So we kind of have, like I mentioned, we use LearnerWeb, but we don't use it the same way Marty does. So when her teachers actually teach LearnerWeb in the classroom, we have students complete that before they start. We usually recommend that they start it and finish it before the actual CNA classes start. But sometimes some students don't get to it, or they sign up late and they're working on it. But our only requirement is that they have to have it done by the time they finish the CNA course. So it is much better to get it before the course even starts, because otherwise they're going to be overwhelmed throughout the course. So our integrated program, they're taught by the ABE instructors, and then the other days are taught by Minnesota West instructors. So for example, Mondays and Wednesdays are ABE days, and Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays are Minnesota West days. And so on ABE days, we go over curriculum, we review for tests coming up, we look at vocabulary words that students are having difficulty with. They also do some PIC will come on those days also to come and do employability skills, soft training, things like that. They'll take field trips on those days. They'll go and visit the nursing homes. They will participate in dementia simulation. They'll have employer panels, things like that. All right, next one. Our partners is, as I mentioned, is PIG, Minnesota West, and then our local high schools. We really depend on them because they are the ones that help fill in our enrollment. So Pat, when she was here, they, out of necessity, they had hybrid classes in which they put high school students and adult students together. And it was a necessity because they weren't able to fill a class with just high school, or they weren't able to fill a class with just adult students. So they put them together, and they actually were able to get some good things that happened out of that. High school students were able to learn from the adults and vice versa. And it also solved our problems of making sure that we fill that minimum requirement to run a class with Minnesota West. Otherwise, it wasn't. For instance, a class is $1,000. It's going to be $1,000 whether we have 2 people or we have our max of, 15 people. So we always wanted to make sure that we had enough people in there. So that was a really good solution, and we've kind of kept up with it. Walton, we haven't done so much with. We haven't had a lot of students that were filling up with it. This last one we did do a hybrid, but most of the time Welling hasn't really filled up. It's been with high school students, but our CNA program has been very strong in the hybrid, and the students really enjoy being mixed with adults and with the high school students. And obviously our partners are local businesses as well too that have worked with us, and they helped us with our curriculum and making sure that we cover everything that needs to be covered. They allow our students to go into their businesses and meet with patients. We're able to do our clinicals with them. We're able to do dementia simulation with them. Vera and Boulder States have both hosted our students in doing that. So that's been awesome. And then they also help with our TB testing as well too. So a lot of things that we wouldn't be able to get out of if businesses wouldn't have partnered with us. Thanks. All right, so I kind of mentioned before about the employability skills. So we, this one is mostly CNA. We don't really do much with welding, but with the CNA program, again, I mentioned we do that in dementia simulation. I don't know much about it. It's kind of a kept secret because they don't want to ruin the experience for somebody. So you can't really talk about it. So you go in there, and I know it's something, I understand it's something like they have students, they put goggles on them, or they weigh down their hands or feet or something, and they make them so they know what it feels like to have dementia, and so that they can offer empathy to their patients, and they really know how their patients feel, because it's we think of dementia, we probably just think of somebody who forgets things, but there are also some physical symptoms that go with it, and it makes our students a lot more empathetic if they understand what their patients go through. We are also able to offer nutrition classes, and the U of M Extension office provides that for us. They provide it as a free service. Usually Darlis Rengard comes from U of M for us and provides that nutrition class, as well as the finance class. We have an ABE finance grant that we pay a gal that comes in. She teaches the students about how to make a budget or things like that, because stats have found out that if employees are they're more trained in money, they are going to be better employees, because they understand how to, just simple bunch of things that we should have learned in high school that hasn't been taught as much anymore. So a lot of these students are coming in, they're not knowing how to, they don't understand that they make this much, that they also need to pay a mortgage or a car. They just see that as, oh, I have this much money, I'm going to go and spend it. And then kind of same thing with nutrition class too, is that we're realizing a lot of these students were assuming that they know how to boil water or boil an egg. They don't know how to do that. And so having U of M Extension come and teaching students these very basic skills, because sometimes they might be working in the home with patients, and this is a very basic skill that they could use with their patients. Right, next. Successes. So we have a very high rate of graduation. Most of probably in the high 90s. Once in a while, we'll get students that don't pass, and the tests are very expensive. So if PIC allows it, we are able to retutor a student and have them take the test again, and PIC will pay for it. But otherwise, we haven't had a lot of that, which is awesome. And most of our students get employed after. They either become CNAs in a healthcare facility, or they go work it at home. And sometimes they go and become nurses after, because I know around here, I'm not sure if the whole state is doing that, but I know for sure down here, if you go and work at a nursing home or any of the healthcare facilities here that participate in it, they do have tuition reimbursement. So that's very exciting news for our students who would never have thought about being able to go to a four-year school and get an actual degree. I know we had a gentleman who started with our ESL program, and then he did our CNA program, completed it, and now he is a paramedic up in the Twin Cities. So that's very exciting to hear that, and we have a couple stories like that. So it's really neat to hear that our program has started their jump to be able to go and do something else there. Right, next page. All right, so my last slide is just advice for a one-room schoolhouse setting. Is you really need to collaborate and partner up, especially down where we are at. We don't have a lot of resources, and if we partner up with other organizations that have the same goals as we do, which is helping adults and helping them get jobs and just get basic trainings to really better their lives, then why not? I know that some people, I know Pat always talks about that we need to step out of our silos and we need to start talking with other people. But communication is very, very important. And with our career force here, we actually have career pathways meeting once a month. It's always the first Friday of the month, and we have that every month. And so it's fantastic because we can go over the timeline of what classes are coming up, how our class is going, what do we do next. And so that's a neat way for us to keep that communication line open. And then grants too. We are able to work on grants together. It helps with enrollment, as I mentioned, with the hybrid method. That is amazing for backfilling, whether we need to backfill with high school students or backfill with adults. And then just kind of method of delivery too, is we've started looking at alternative ways of delivering instruction, is either through ITV or web conferencing. Because like I said, Marty's probably teaching classes down there that we may have a couple students up here not able to have our own class, but that they may want to join Marty's class. So we don't have to have them drive an hour every day to go and join that class. They can go online here or the comfort of their home, and they're able to get that certification. So that's really exciting. We're hoping to get into that and do more of that. Next.
Thank you, C. Could I just ask real quick, what does ITV stand for?
I don't know, and I thought about the other day. It's probably like interactive TV video or something like that.
Oh, okay. So it's like similar to web conferencing.
Yeah, it's like it, except it has more fancy equipment.
Okay. So I'd like to open it up to everyone for clarifying or curious questions you have for C. And also, please feel free to share a key takeaway that you would like to apply in your program. You have the option to just use the chat box, and I'll be monitoring that, or you can use the raise your hand feature, and Patsy will unmute you.
Elizabeth and C, while people are thinking about and typing their questions, C, there was one question that was in the chat while you were speaking about the curriculum that you're using on LearnerWeb, and I mentioned in the chat that LearnerWeb is going to be sunsetting, and the distance learning team is looking at options for other online curriculum to fill that gap, and mentioned that Edmentum does have some career pathway options. Can you speak to any of the lower level CNA prep or career pathway things that you've you're investigating to replace LearnerWeb?
I went to a conference in November, and the CEO or person who founded Care Academy was speaking, and so Care Academy really intrigued me. So I did some digging around that, but they actually have really cool, really neat curriculum in which it's self-paced, and they have short little videos, and then there's activities that go with it. And that, I thought that was perfect for our lower ESL students. Unfortunately, their pricing is not ABE friendly. So you had to choose, let's say you chose 10 spots, and you have to pay that 10 spots every month, and it was a set fee, and it was a really high price. So in the summer, when we don't have CNA, we still had to pay that price, the subscription. And so it wasn't something that we could do. And if you had more students, then you had to purchase extra ones. So the curriculum was really good, but the pricing wasn't going to work for us. But that's all the lead we have right now so far. So I know the distance learning committee and I have been kind of still rocking our reins and thinking about what to do. And I know there was, Susan talked about possibly pulling some of the content from LearnerWeb and putting it onto another platform. I don't know, I don't know how, yeah, that's just another possibility. But otherwise, if anybody has any suggestions too, if they see anything out there that they like or that we recommend, we're all ears.
Thanks, T.
Yeah. Yes, and speaking of Edmentum, there really are a lot of course offerings available just through that free statewide account. I personally am not really familiar with the quality or the level of most of them, but I think they're definitely worth exploring. Jill mentioned that she really likes the idea of having a career pathway meeting once a month with your workforce center or career force.
Yeah, we really like it too, because it with Sean and Marty and I being in different regions, we get to at least see each other once a month and go over things. And sometimes communication gets lost when you have multiple threads going through, and we're not on the same page, and it just helps a lot better to be face to face. And so the career pathways meeting is we have Minnesota West representatives, we have some of the career force representatives down from Worthington and Marshall, and then we also have some the school district representatives that come. So it's really neat that we're all there together and we're able to work on any kinks or details that we have, and kind of brainstorm about ideas too we have. So yeah, I love it. It's awesome to be able to meet every month and do that. And I thought everybody did that, but I guess they didn't.
Yeah, I think it's so important to reach out to people outside of ABE because they often really don't have any idea what we're trying to do. I personally was wondering about your finance grant. Could you say a little bit more about that?
I don't know much about it. I just know that it was a grant that Pat knows how to find money everywhere. If there's money to be found, she knows how to find it. So she had secured this grant quite a while back, and so we just has been slowly taking out of it to pay the person who teaches the finance class. So yeah, it's been awesome having it, and the person who's done it has done it so long, so she knows what she's talking about, and she goes in there and it's more in depth than having somebody from Career Force come and do it. Not that they don't do a good job, but I know that they're very busy, so they always come and just do like a surface version of it. But we have our own person that spends an actual hour with our students, and they just really get down, and the students, I think, have a better understanding of their financial situation. And because I think we all assume that students have financial training from their parents, but a lot of times these students, adults and high school students, they don't get that talked to by their parents. I know I never did. I got it through the school, and I know now they don't really teach that in schools anymore. So it's something we take for granted, but I am really thankful that we have that and we're able to pay somebody to do it. And I think when our grant runs out, I think we will still invest in it and have somebody come. When I was at that same conference in November, I did meet somebody that teaches finance classes, and I asked her, and she did agree that if I ever needed anybody to teach finance class, she'd be willing to join through web conferencing and teach the class that way too. And she would do it for no cost. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I see Julie in the chat box has a question. How did you establish the relationship with career and technical education in the high school? And she was also wondering about if you have to pay for part of the high school instructor, and if so, how do you figure the costs for that?
So the relationship is, I believe it started because schools themselves wanted to have opportunities for their students to have that career technical training. I know that, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the LIFT grant. It was, I believe we are in our last year down in Southwestern Minnesota here, but there's a grant opportunity for schools. If they work with another school and a business, they were able to implement some kind of career technical training. But I think it's been, I mean, I feel like in the last several years, it's been in the works of schools are trying to implement and give more opportunities for their students to test out these different careers that they may not have a chance. That 4-year really isn't always going to be the route for students, that there is that 2-year option and they can get training, they can get into a job right away. So most of these relationships have been established before I took over, so I was lucky and I just make sure I keep nurturing it. But Maytech, our Marshall Area Technical Education Center here, they are the ones that have the CNA room, so they have 5 beds there, and then they have a welding classroom there that we use. So we don't go to the regular high school. Actually, some of the regular high school students come to Maytech to attend the classes there. And then Julie's other question was, we don't pay for high school instructor. So PIC actually pays for our ABE instructors to teach the integrated, and well, we pay and then they reimburse us. And then they also pay for the Minnesota West instructor, part of the grant that we work on together.
Well, thank you so much, C. I think we're going to move on to Jill now. C will stay with us as long as she can, so you might have another opportunity to ask her a question later if something comes to mind. But let's move on to Jill. Jill is the manager of Hiawatha Valley Adult Education, and I'll turn it over to her now. Thanks, Jill, and thanks, C.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you just fine.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so we'll move to the next slide here. Let's see. Okay. So you had sent some questions, and so I've just answered the questions. What are the challenges? And being we're a small program, very spread out. Red Wing's the biggest town that we work in, but the rest of the communities are pretty small. And so it's really hard to get enough students for a cohort. To get enough students who want to be a, welder at one time or at a time that works for them can be difficult. So we've been trying to work through that. Train staff, we're a pretty small program, so we have very few staff. And then helping to prepare students in a career that the teacher isn't real familiar with can be difficult, and we're doing a lot of learning on our own to help them in the next career. Curriculum development, the time to put together curriculum development can be overwhelming in a small program. You may be putting curriculum together for 1 student a year or 2 students a year. So this is where Atlas and excuse me is really coming in handy to look through what's already been done, and we're not reinventing the wheel. And then I guess the other one would be, we put together a couple of, they're more not so much of a career pathway as just an occupational class, and did it on Google Sites, but you can't get proxy hours that way. So we'd love to find a website that we can put on our curriculum and get proxy hours for that work. So trying to figure that out has been huge too, if we're going to make it convenient for our adults so they don't have to come into the classroom and do any kind of and all their work there. So those would be our biggest challenges. Let's see. Currently, we're offering a number of classes. Again, we're small, so we put together both an admin assistant and a CDL permit prep class on Google Sites. And then it is to be used as kind of an individualized program where they can work on it on their own. But again, it's on Google Sites, so for us to get the hours, they need to be in the classroom. We're looking at adding like specific times for that admin assistant, so they'd work on their own, but then class would be a couple hours a week to keep them moving forward. We seem like people start and then they haven't moved on. So, and it's, they're working in Word, Google, so it's really a good way for them to get experience in technology. The CDL permit prep, we've had one student that came through, couple that have started and really took apart the manual and then, gave them some reading, some writing activities, some video, that kind of stuff. We are looking at adding this to our jail program. Currently, we have class in our jail. We have ABE, GED class, but we also have a career access program. We call it CAP class, where they talk about finances, resumes, that. And then but the person that we work with at the jail is really interested in us bringing that there. Our biggest issue would be the testing. Afterwards, we'd get them ready, and can someone come in and test them in the jail? And that's our next step as to what we do, where we go from there. But he's very interested in the CDL coming into the jail. So the next classes that we have, next slide. Currently, we're running a P2P. Well, we had a P2P3 grant and a P2P4 grant. And we're finishing up P2P3 and just starting P2P4, but they're just a continuation. And so it's a welding class that is outside of the jails, and that is funded by the P2P grant, and it is geared towards people with a criminal background. And it's not just in Red Wing. This is a P2P grant that is river region, so it goes from Goodhue County, Wabasha County, Winona County, down to Houston County. So we have the welding class in Minnesota State Southeast College in Red Wing and in Winona. So the welding has been real popular just because it's a hands-on class. They come in. We're also, workforce development is putting together other grants so that we can, there's a woman grant, I can't remember what the name of that is. So we can mix and match the grants, I guess I should say. The Manufacturing 101 is a class where they get OSHA 10, they get college credit, manufacturing math. We've tried it outside of the class, but can't get enough people, again, running into the cohort issue. So it's been pretty much done in county jails, but it's been very popular. So it's been done in Winona County and in Goodhue County. And it originally was to be outside of just a regular class, but couldn't find enough people to take it, so we moved it into the jail. Health literacy class, we worked last year with our area, with our Southeast Consortium, with the Regional Transitions money, to put together a health literacy class for the whole area, which is Southeast Consortium, Rochester, and us. So we're working on adding that class, but have run into, again, not enough students to take the class. Mayo is interested in working with us as well as Southeast Consortia to put together some kind of a program like they have with Rochester, Hawthorne. Again, looking at how can we run that with a smaller a group of people, how can we do it more individually. So that may be tweaking that. We're trying to get one to go here in March, but we may have to bump it to later and do some more advertising. The Parapro prep class isn't really officially a class, but again, it's got the Edmentum has the curriculum, so students can come in. We do testing here in Red Wing, and so occasionally we get students who don't pass the test that say, I really need to pass this test, what can I do? And if they're from my area, then I hand them off to, and we work with them in Edmentum, or give them, like one was from Rochester, so just gave them Hawthorne's information. So we're trying a couple of occupational classes and a couple of career pathways, some more successful than others. So next slide. Our partners with our P2P, we partner with Workforce Development Inc. or WDI. And they're in our region all the way down to Houston County, and then Minnesota State College Southeast, both in Winona and in Red Wing. So we've been doing this. We've had a P2P grant with them for the last 5 years we've been working together. So it's been pretty nice. We kind of know each other, know how we work. In fact, I got a meeting here in a little while to discuss the next 6 months of programming. We're part of the Red Wing Area Manufacturing Association, so go to those meetings, talk to them about what they want. There was discussion now about mechatronics, and the college is looking at adding that. So I've already contacted our person at the college to ask if there's how that would be great for P2P to get some of our students involved. So working with them. And then Goodhue County Adult Detention Center is the jail that we work in. And again, we're looking at offering CDL, and then we have the manufacturing class in there. And employers, again, we meet many of them through the Area Manufacturing Association. Employers, Trinity Meyer is our big employer for welding in the area. And then Mayo, we have Mayo though, so Mayo for the healthcare. So working at trying to get more communication going with our partners. Successes we've had, we did have one guy who had taken the CDL permit test a couple of times and didn't pass. So he worked on it, came and worked with us, and then he did pass once he had gone through it. So we were pretty excited about that. We have one person currently working with us on admin assistant. She is a 50-some-year woman who decided that she's working a line at one of the manufacturing companies and realizes she probably doesn't want to do that much longer, and was very interested in more technology skills and the career of admin assistant. So excited to be starting to work with her. So again, we're pretty small. We get excited when we have one student who wants to work on that area. The manufacturing class in the jails has been very successful. It's tricky sometimes because our jail has DOC people that come, so they can be there for a year, but some of those guys aren't going to get out of prison for 5 years. So the P2P grant is geared more towards, we need to get these people in jobs in the next one, quarter or 1 year. So we kind of have to see who best fits into the class. Again, welding, we have a number of past participants that are working as welders. Again, we've been running this class for about 5 years, but now this year it's geared currently for people with criminal backgrounds. Question or slide. So what advice? Using the Atlas site, and I know you're going to be covering that in a little while, but it has so much great information. So continue to do that. Hybrid occupational class. When we have such a small, we can't get the cohort of students, can we offer the occupational classes? So if they're going to be reading or working anyways, can we have them working towards a career at the same time as preparing for their GED, or helping people who just are currently working that just want to try and better their life with a different career. So yeah, so we've been working on trying to figure out the best ones to offer. Now with the 40-hour rule waiver, if they're working towards preparing for a occupational test, that has given us definitely something to think about as far as Microsoft prep or other kind of programs that we're prepping, we could be getting them ready for occupational tests. A slide. Work with your partners. Like I said, I heard mechatronics was being discussed and already contacted about keep us in mind. If we could be a bridge to that program, getting people to even find out what that program is and getting them the skills so they can be successful into the program. We'd love to work with them. So again, contacting your partners when you hear that they're starting to think about other programs. Thinking outside the box, hoping we can figure out some way to offer career training through Zoom or a way to get the proxy hours for students working online. Again, our students all work at different times. Some of them are working a lot of hours, and when they're available to be working on the career isn't always when we're available to be doing the career class. So if we could get something online where they can watch a video and work on their own time and we're there as their resource, really look forward to doing that. So hopefully something like that will come up soon. Slide. Okay, that was it.
So, sorry, Jill, I didn't mean to cut you off if you still had more to say.
Nope.
Yeah, I think we're going to move on just to make sure that we have enough time to hear everything that Michelle had prepared for us, and then we'll have kind of a joint question and discussion time after both Jill and Michelle are finished. So thank you so much, Jill, and welcome, Michelle.
Michelle, go ahead and speak up. We'll see if we can hear you.
Oh, hello. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Michelle. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. It was mute, unmute, mute, and everything else situation. So hello, my name is Michelle Walton. I'm the Director of Development at the Northwest Indian Community Development Center. And I've been working here for 3 years now. I started in ABE as an AmeriCorps Vista to build its capacity. And I have since moved on to, stayed somewhat connected to ABE throughout that time. And I recently completed the ACP cohort. I think that was last year. Geez, time is just flying by. But so I'm really excited to talk with you today about some of the great stuff that we're doing up in Bemidji. So next slide, please. So yeah, a little bit about NWICDC, because saying the Northwest Indian Community Development Center 10 times fast is very difficult. We are a community-based organization that was originally founded in 1989 as an initiative to address employment disparities in Bemidji and the surrounding Northwest area of Minnesota. So we aren't connected to any sort of school district or workforce area, which gives us a lot of flexibility in determining what kind of things we want to work on for our adult career pathways, as well as flexibility in offering different types of supportive services with our ABE programs. And so that all kind of changed our original mission and vision in 2011 through some gathering of elders and knowledge keepers. And we realized that we do really need to integrate a holistic view of a person, family, and community in order to address the large disparities that were present and continue to be present in Bemidji. And we also, that has a huge implications for employment, job readiness, job placement, as well as education. So we kind of do 3 different foundational lenses of Anishinaabe worldview. Everything that we have goes through our Anishinaabe worldview. Hi, I'm sorry, I think my connection just popped off there. Can everybody hear me?
You're back. Yeah, go right ahead. We only lost a few seconds, so just like rewind 10 seconds.
Okay, perfect. Great. So I think I was just touching base on kind of our structure a little bit, is that Everything that we do from GED, ABE to our adult career pathways work is gone through kind of three foundational lenses, which is Anishinaabe worldview, trauma-informed approach, and then how is this creating social change and recognizing our work in decolonizing. Also, as a community-based organization, we do a lot of things that are not directly ABE related, but all of these programs kind of work together in that holistic view. So the main one that I'll be talking about today is our NWICDC program, which is where you'll find the education and workforce components. But we also, these overlap with our Umbashka program, where we welcome men and women returning home from jail or prison. A lot of our ACP work does focus on that. And then we also have some additional emerging programs as well. Next slide, please. So yeah, we operate as a one-room schoolhouse. That's, I guess, why I'm here today. We are a sub-site in partnership with the American Indian OIC down in the cities, and they've just been a great resource for us. We have drop-in hours for anybody on their schedule. Technology and distance learning is one of a big barrier, I think, in our community, because a lot of people don't have access to computers or to internet, especially in like rural areas. As you can tell, my internet right now is not as great as as it is. But we serve on average about 15 to 30 students within our GED program every year. Those participating in our larger NWICDC programs, I would say that's upward of about maybe 200. And everybody here who comes into that program ranges in ages and educational functioning levels. We see really everything under the sun. And that's just a testament to, I think, the space that's created here of welcoming people no matter where they are at in their journey. And within our NWICDC program and our ABE program, we have several different staff members to make it all happen. We use a lot of AmeriCorps programs as kind of building a career pathway for somebody who's coming, who's ready, who's wanting to do like nonprofit work. So that's a really cool program. We have about 15 vistas. This year we integrated AmeriCorps Promise Fellow position. If you haven't heard of them, they're great, and I was a strong advocate for bringing them into the ABE world. Usually they're in through K-12 education, but a lot of them work at community-based organizations as well. We also have a range of educators, care coordinators, which are kind of like our navigators, and support service providers. So all of these teams kind of work together to make all of our ABE and NWICDC programs happen. Next slide, please. So yeah, we kind of focus on two specific career pathways here. One of the great things about being a community-based organization is that we can have social enterprises, which I'll talk about the Moua-Leske deconstruction program. So a lot of people have heard of the construction pathway, but we have said that we can actually start the construction pathway a little bit earlier with actually deconstruction. So deconstruction is when you have old buildings that need to be remediated and taken down, and we can actually use those materials and salvage those materials into new things. Right now they're actually working on building some really cool shelves for our organization. So it's a way of providing on-the-job training for hard-to-place individuals. Most of the people that come into the Moua-Leske deconstruction program are from our reentry program. And along the way, they're also gaining those credentials in OSHA safety. We do OSHA 10 and 30 here. Last year, we had lead paint removal and asbestos abatement removal. So those have been really great. Some of the other presenters also mentioned the WISA grant. We have done 2 rounds of all women welding programs with partners in Red Lake at the Oshi Majitada. They're a great partner to have, and we've had some really great success in that program. And it's just, I don't know, if I could do it all over again, I definitely want to be a women welder. It just sounds great. So those are kind of our construction areas. And then we've also focused a lot on healthcare. In the past, we have done CNA and CHW pathways and certifications, but Bemidji State actually closed their certification center that was working with community-based organizations such as ourselves to provide CEUs and things like that. So we have kind of had to reevaluate doing those 2 specific trainings, but we have done those in the past. And I think it's also a testament to, you have to have those backup plans and always thinking about what's the alternative or what's the next step to make sure that this is continuing and provided for members or students. We've also done a 40-hour peer specialist training and alcohol dependency certifications through the Upper Midwest Indian Council on Addictive Disorders. They are actually a certifying body, so they can provide certificates, and we've hosted several trainings here, as well as actually been a testing site for their programs. Another cool thing that we've done is doula and lactation training with one of our partner organizations, Moua-Leske. They're actually co-located in our space, so it's a really great partnership. And we're lucky to have one of their staff members is a nurse practitioner who is also an Indigenous breastfeeding educator. Again, if I could do it all over again, totally would go in that career pathway. And those are going to be upcoming for the next, we've done those in the past and then also have some scheduled for the next upcoming months. So that's kind of about how we've integrated additional career pathways within our programs focusing on construction and healthcare. Next slide, please. So I think it's important that there's some discussion about like how we came up with these. It's not drawing things out of a hat. Sometimes it feels like that, but a lot of planning goes into this. And that's kind of where my role has been since I've done a lot of ACP training. And so we use both workforce development and data on in-demand careers. You can see the healthcare, you can see the construction connection, and those are both in-demand careers for our area. Our executive director also serves on the governor's workforce board. So she informs a lot of equity and advocating for Northwest Minnesota and for the Anishinaabe community here. We also use input from partners such as the tribal human resource departments in Leech Lake, Red Lake, and White Earth, as well as the local businesses around here. I think it's also important to have context within the community, like what kind of jobs and careers do people actually want to pursue, and how can we learn not only from like the Western community, but also the traditional community about how work was typically done or traditionally done in our community in the past. So that's also visiting with elders, visiting with knowledge keepers about, how does this work, pathway recognize, good work, not just, punching in and out every day, but finding meaning and that connection and contextualization to the culture here. And then we also look at a lot of larger socioeconomic trends to think about what our workforce is going to need for future community needs. So, for example, I think the 2 most prevalent ones are the substance use disorder. So Bemidji has one of the highest rates of opioid use and substance use disorders. And we have to kind of critically look and say, where's the representation for Indigenous providers And how is that contributing to overall health for our community if there aren't people who are representative of the community that are helping others? So that's where you see the connection to the peer recovery specialists and peer specialists as well. Same goes for the maternal and child healthcare. Bemidji has one of the highest rates of teen pregnancy in the state. Again, you know, where's the representation of Indigenous providers? Stanford Health, I think, serves about 40% of Indigenous people within their services, but yes, less than 0.1% of all staff members are Native. So those are also questions that we take into consideration when we're planning. I also think that one of the recent questions that have come up within our organization is how are we also taking care of our elders as they age, and who's the workforce that will replace them, as well as take care of them as we kind of emerge on that within our community. Next slide, please. So here's some of our successes. We've had, like I said, 2 rounds of the welding classes, graduating about 3 to 5 women per class. We are working on becoming a CPR kind of base or CPR training center. So we're not outsourcing all of those hours to just trainers, that we are actually being the trainers that are doing the training for other people, and then, you know, continuing that cycle. So we actually, all of our staff are now CPR instructors. We've held the OSHA 10 and 30 trainings throughout the year. Last year, we graduated 9 GED students. I'm famous for being the one that's sobbing in the corner at each GED graduation. So if any of those pictures suffice or come to the surface, you know how I look now. We also have increased our Inokiwin classes for fundamental trainings, foundational training. So these are kind of more of your on-ramp classes, and we do workplace communication, customer service in the workplace, and digital literacy. One of the VISTA projects that was worked on last year was actually aligning all of these to the ABE standards, and kind of revamping all of our digital classes so that they are aligned with and contextualized, aligned with standards and contextualized for the community. So those are offered now 2 times weekly, which we're really excited about. Next slide, please. So I think that being in a rural location, we obviously have human capital crises and challenges for finding staff who are able to, who hold knowledge in adult education, career pathways, and then also incorporating the cultural context that we work in. Ensuring that trainings are provided, meet all the various curriculum standards, and furthering instruction and academic support for all members. We also have challenges in contextualizing curriculum, first in Anishinaabe worldview and teachings. If we give somebody something that's not relevant, as told time and time again through ABE, they're not really going to connect with it. So that's something that we've started to collect a lot of teachings on. We also, I think with adult career pathways, you're mixing a lot of funding streams. So now we have to report outcomes for DEED, MDE, DHS. We have a federal grant through the Department of Labor. Sometimes we have trainings through MDH, as well as our internal monitoring and evaluation. So all of that can get a little overwhelming sometimes. And also, I feel like being a one-room schoolhouse, you can have a lot of people who are working on a lot of moving parts, and being an advocate as well as being a trainer for people it's a constant need, and it's something that I've realized that as I gain more knowledge in this, that it really has to, you know, being an advocate for it is so important, and just kind of stepping up and saying, you know, this is how it's going to go, or, you know, this is how it needs to go, and these are the suggestions. Oh, I think
Oh, we lost your sound, Michelle. Are you still with us? Looks like she's lost audio. Maybe while she's regaining her audio, if people have a specific question or something they wanted to ask in the chat box, we'll just give her a moment to reconnect with us. Reactions or things you're thinking about as you hear about all of this amazing programming happening in this part of the state? What struck you from what Michelle has shared so far?
You can also chat in reflections or questions for Jill, because we will circle back and ask her some questions as well.
I know there was a question in the chat around deconstruction. I wonder if anyone else on the webinar was doing deconstruction. I'd heard of it even. I didn't know what the word was for it until I heard Michelle talking about it once. Okay, and then as far as future programming, Michelle, you still don't have audio, looks like. Elizabeth, do you want to just walk us through these bullet points?
Sure. So Michelle says they would like to include more bridge and on-ramp instruction for healthcare and construction to help meet more community members where they are in their learning journey. They're also working to contextualize the peer support specialist and personal care assistant curriculums, and always looking into expanding ACP work through partnerships with employers, training providers, and other community-based organizations. Oh, Michelle, I wish we could have you back to talk with us. I'm not be able to do this justice. But I'll read what she had prepared for us. They're working, so some things they have learned is that it's really essential to create spaces in curriculum that are reflective and contextualized. Michelle, I'd love to hear more about that if you can rejoin us. They're also wanting to provide holistic care coordination or navigation. And having services co-located at their location is a huge benefit, especially in places where transportation is a significant barrier, as I'm sure it is in many rural programs. Thinking outside the box is important, echoing some of our other panelists, listening not only to the workforce boards, but also to partners and community members about how their career pathways can meet current needs, and also plan for future workforce needs. Oh, do we have some? Wonderful. I'll turn it back over to you, Michelle.
Oh, thanks for continuing on with me. Yeah, sorry about that. I just decided, it's right when you're presenting that it all just like goes to the wind.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess you're up the think outside the box. Yes. Okay. So I think one of the great things that we do is not only connecting with the workforce boards, but also like listening to our community. We do a lot of evaluations. We think about, how do people move through our different programs, and how do we connect them and meet them where they're at different phases in their lives. You can see that we have a lot of different partnerships, and building relationships is key to making sure that all of these work. But it takes a lot of time and understanding where partners are coming from, what has worked with them, their history, and also context within the community. If you have a partner that's not trusted or respected within like the membership, or it's gonna definitely take a toll, and so you have to be selective, but also understand where the community is coming from, and maybe some barriers that they might have for that. So, yep, next slide, please. I think that's it. Yes, thank you.
So, Michelle, if you wanted to go back and talk a little bit more about things you've learned or your ideas for future programming, we could take a minute to do that. I just read your bullet points, but I'm sure I didn't do it justice.
Maybe if we could just go back to the future programming. I guess I would just
Sure.
make sure oh, yep. So we're working on contextualizing the peer support specialist and personal care assistant curriculums. And then also, I guess, looking at additional bridge and on-ramp instruction for healthcare and construction. And also, I would love to look into the Parapro and some other great training. So we'll see what the next phase of our ABE programs looks like. But I think we have a lot of great foundation to build upon and some really great partners to continue this work. So, yep, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you also to Jill. So we have just about 20 minutes, perfect amount of time for some good discussion. Please participate. It's so wonderful to hear ideas from all of our attendees across the state. So we'd love to hear what is one clarifying or curious question that you have for Jill or Michelle, or also for your fellow webinar participants. And what is one key takeaway that you would like to apply in your program? I would like to hear more about your process, Michelle, for contextualizing curriculum within a specific culture.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We do a lot of readings. It's still in progress, but we have to understand that there's this whole other knowledge base about math, about science, about and readings and authors who are not represented in some of the curriculum that we get. That's just, out of the box curriculum that we've definitely used. And so one of the things is, how are we, integrating the cultural knowledge with those and still meeting those standards at the same time. So I think that we've done, one of our Vistas did a lot of visiting with our staff members who are our cultural advisors. They also met with elders and kind of thought about how could we make this into something that's more reflective. And so he started working on a science curriculum, a math curriculum, and then also pulling readings from Indigenous authors that were either local to the region, local to the state of Minnesota, or even some international Indigenous authors that we could use for supplemental readings within our curriculum, and have those kind of develop into their own way eventually.
It looks like we lost her again.
Yeah.
Michelle, we're not hearing you. It looks like your audio has dropped off, but Elizabeth, do you want to take some of these other, I'm just reading Carol's here in the chat box.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, lots of options. It's the regional, of course, and at the Summer Institute. I certainly encourage people to be thinking about putting Summer Institute presentations in, by the way. Those are due in about a month, so something to think about. Michelle, I hope you can rejoin us, but when you can, yeah, let's just continue with the chat feature, or feel free to raise your hand and I can unmute people. I'll turn it back over to you, Elizabeth.
Sure. One follow-up question I had from Jill's portion, I was wondering if anyone has experience with the process for getting proxy hours for distance learning platforms that are not necessarily time on task. I know there is a process for doing that, but I don't have any experience with it personally, and I think it might be valuable for many of us. Yeah, Jill writes, is there someone on the distance learning team that could possibly answer that? And Teresa's asking, does the state put out a list of sites that give proxy hours? That question I can answer. On the Minnesota ABE distance learning site, there are nice lists of state-supported programs and platforms that you can pay for but have been approved for distance learning hours. Most of them track time on task, so unlike Google Sites, those are pretty easy. Yes, Astrid just put the link to the distance learning website. So you can find approved platforms there, but then there's a separate process for, you have to submit an application and so forth. And there's a way to get other things that are not necessarily time on task approved for a certain number of proxy hours.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, this is Astrid. I'm currently searching for the link to that form that people would need to complete to get something approved for proxy hours. And if there isn't a time on task feature, then that does involve some piloting on the part of the program that would like to get the platform approved. So you would need to do some piloting in your program and observe and collect some data on how long, on average, students are taking to complete certain units of instruction. And if you give me just a minute, I will put that link in the chat box.
Sure. Thank you, Astrid. What other clarifying or just curious questions do you have for our presenters? Also just what are you mulling over in your head as you're thinking about ACPs for your program? What would you like some input on from your colleagues? We're all learning here. I don't think anyone is really an expert on ACPs in the One Room Schoolhouse, so please feel free to share anything that's on your mind. Oh, Sarah Sundberg writes that you can contact the distance learning team regarding the approval process. She herself currently has a application in progress, and it's pretty straightforward. Carol is asking if anyone is using MCIS as part of their ACP programming. I believe that's the Minnesota Career Information System. Yes, this question of level gains or measurable skill gains comes from Jessica Turner. It's a little intimidating possibly to branch out to ACP courses if they don't rely heavily on reading or math, right? We want to get our students the contact hours, but we also want them to be showing measurable skill gains. So how do we integrate both the career preparation and the academic skills that they need? So Astrid has also shared an email address where you can contact the Minnesota ABE distance learning team. And yeah, we're still wondering what are some other takeaways or questions that people have.
Well, I'm not seeing any hands up or any chats in the chat box. Are you, Elizabeth?
No,
Okay.
we're
So
a quiet group today, I guess.
yeah, so I think we'll go ahead and just go to some of the resources and such that we have on the next couple of slides. And then, of course, as people have other questions or takeaways or things they want to direct towards Jill or Michelle, please feel free to continue typing away. But in the
Yes.
meantime,
So I just wanted to show you briefly the Atlas website. It's really easy to find. You go to atlasabe.org and you can type that full link that's right there, or if you just click on the resources tab at the top, adult career pathways, it's alphabetical order, so it shows up right away. And if you go into that adult career pathways area, there are just an amazing collection of curricula that your colleagues in other Minnesota ABE programs have developed in all sorts of occupational areas. Our program has started looking at those for bridging into healthcare careers. It's really exciting because we all know curriculum development takes so much time. So it's so nice that our colleagues have been willing to share all that with us. And then there's also a lot of other resources if you want to develop your own ACP programming a little more from scratch, perhaps in a new occupational area that isn't listed up there yet. I know lots of things that the ACP cohorts have used, lots of templates and worksheets and processes for planning and evaluating. Just a lot of really great things I would encourage you to check out. And then, yes, we would love to see you on Schoology. There's the code and the website with the directions for joining if you're not sure. And we can continue this discussion about career pathways in a one-room schoolhouse on Schoology as well. I'm just checking the chat, but it looks like not a lot of new information. So Sarah did mention that a new addition to the application process for the proxy hours for distance learning is to create and submit a screencast about using the new platform, and it will be used on the state distance learning program site. Well, thank you for that, Sarah. All right, and then Astrid, would you like to talk a little bit about the upcoming PD opportunities?
Sure, I can. I'm already here. I'll talk through a couple things. Yeah, so we want to be sure people know about a few upcoming webinars because it's webinar season here as we move towards spring. So the next one we're having around CCRS is on March 18th at 2 o'clock. We're having something called Bulldozing the Silos, Integrating Language Literacy, Math, and Rigorous Content. And we're excited to present that with the College and Career Readiness Standards Implementation Lead Team, including a guest, Leah Conklin-Olson from the Hub Center will be joining us and talking through a financial literacy lesson, showing how we can indeed do language development, literacy development, some math work, and content related to students and their communities within one context. So tune into that on March 18th. We have another Adult Career Pathways webinar coming up. The last one of our series of 5 will be on May 14th at 1 o'clock, that one focusing on navigation. And then for those of you who work with language learners, there's a pronunciation webinar focusing on intonation this time, the day before at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So lots of good webinar things to come, as well, of course, as our in-person stuff. So in the next one, yep, you'll see that there's a math conference. Anyone here who works with any level of math instruction is welcome to come to the Minnesota Council for the Teachers of Mathematics Conference. It is in Duluth at the end of April, and we do have scholarships available, and that application is available via the Atlas calendar. If you click on April 24th, you'll see that. If you are a math teacher or teach math in your classes in any capacity, you will have much to gain from this conference. It's a statewide kindergarten through college level gathering of math educators that we're happy to be a part of for the 3rd year in a row now. And on the next slide, those of you who do any kind of instructional leadership around CCRS, so if you're doing any kind of coaching or giving people feedback on their lessons, doing observations, helping to decide what materials to purchase, what materials to not use anymore. If you are someone who's in that level of leadership role or would like to be, this event would be a great fit for you. So on May 8th, we'll be at Hamline University with a full day of training around support for instructional leadership and CCRS. So all of those things to come. I'm sure you know about the regional events coming up. Metro is this, we don't have a slide for this, but I'll just say Metro is this Friday, and then later in the month we'll be in Grand Rapids and April 17th in Mankato. So we've been announcing those left and right, but if you don't have them in your calendar yet, check the Atlas events calendar. And that's all I have. On the last slide, we just want to thank everyone for all of your time with us this afternoon. If you want to go to the final slide there, Elizabeth.
Yes.
There it is. So there will be an evaluation that you'll get in your email shortly after the webinar. We'll of course get CEUs to everybody. We do have a couple minutes left, and several of us are here and able to stick around if you have further questions or want to do a little more sharing, or have something else you want to talk about related to adult career pathways in the One Room Schoolhouse. So thank you so much to all of our presenters and to Elizabeth for putting this webinar together. We really appreciate it.
I see Teresa has a question. What information is in Schoology? And that is such a good question. There is so much available in Schoology. It's an online course management system, sort of similar to Edmentum or some of our other distance learning platforms. But we're using it for teachers to kind of network with each other. There's frequent announcement posts. We can have discussion threads. People can share resources that they have been using in their programs, or just interesting articles and resources that they've come across in their work. So just tons and tons and tons of information available there. I would highly recommend checking it out. And again, there are many different groups across many different areas of ABE. So thank you, Jane, for the nice comment.
All right, I am going to stop the recording, but we're not going to disappear. So if you have further questions, we'll hang out for a couple more minutes. And thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everyone.